Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Familia Pablanu. I am the one and only Anu.
Y yo soy Pablo, solamente Pablo.
Ẹ̀ǹlẹ́ gbogbo èèyàn nílẹ̀ Nàìjíríà mo kí yín o nínú ibi tẹ́ bá wà ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò wa Familia Pablanu. Mo lérò pé ń gbádùn ara yín ṣá. On this series, we will be discussing something very dear to our heart. Yeah.
Something we haven't been able to really talk about. It's been very difficult for us, but we
Yeah.
know how important it is, not just for us, but for many, many people. So if you've seen our How We Met series, you'll know that we were in a cult.
Yes. Pablo was raised in it. I married into it, losing my family, my freedom, and myself in the process.
This series is about how we got out.
Yes, it's going to be a wild, epic ride. So hold on to your hat and your fila and your gele. Bugwe.
Mama Africa, your children are home.
Gaining one's freedom can be heart-wrenching,
Terrifying,
eye-opening,
empowering,
lonely,
enlightening,
and scary as hell.
all at once.
As we've said in our previous How We Met series, this project of narrating our experiences has many purposes.
Confronting the past and openly discussing it can be a powerful form of therapy, which can guide us on our lifelong journey towards healing and growth.
We also want to support people who are currently in a cult or a cult-like abusive situation, those who are working through the healing process after leaving one, and anyone close to someone in these situations who wants to better understand and empathize with them so they can offer meaningful support to them during their journey to healing.
Last but not least, we were isolated from most of our family, for in Pablo's case, as much as 2 decades.
This project serves as a record of our experiences for those family members that we were isolated from, so they can better understand us and fill in for lost time.
It also serves as a record for our children and future generations, so that they can know better than we did, and hopefully live a better and freer life than we did.
Now, let's give a brief outline of what we plan to cover in this series.
We'll start by picking up from the end of our last series, How We Met. I knew I was walking into a bad situation, but I felt trapped. I liked Pablo from the beginning, but things changed very quickly.
I grew up in a cult, always feeling like I didn't belong in this world, just passing through to the next one. Nothing was mine, not my dreams, my plans, or even my identity. My dad, who became my spiritual leader at age 9, controlled everything.
My life was taken over, all in the disguise of men taking responsibility.
Life at home was oppressive, but I didn't know it because I'd been raised to see outside people as sinful, broken, misguided, and unable to be trusted, which basically meant I'd been trained to self-isolate from childhood. At home, neglect was a constant, but oddly, it sort of protected me. Even so, a lot of the brainwashing still stayed with me.
The hatred of women was under the disguise of the role of women in general. And I watched how they made fun of women who dared to aspire to self-actualize, which is a word, self-actualize, to be more than what the societal role forced upon them.
My dad's trauma shaped his beliefs, especially around marriage and gender roles, and he became the center of everything. To us, he wasn't just a father, he was God, or at least the mouthpiece of God, which is the second best thing. And that is how so much of his past trauma became my trauma, and that of everyone in the church. I came to embody it in many ways, like a sort of robot zombie with very few thoughts of its own.
They ridicule women, they ridicule intelligent women who dare question men, unfair treatment from men, and they praise women who don't aspire or who aspire to be nothing more than subservient to men. So in the cults, the religious texts were used to keep women silent, they were used to oppress women, to keep them fearful, and to keep them very brainwashed. I lost myself completely just when I was starting to figure out who I was.
So Anu woke up first. She started thinking outside the box and began to see the cult for what it was, what it truly was.
So one day it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh crap, I'm in a cult. All those warnings, the red flags that my friends and family were saying to me, were mentioning to me, finally, suddenly made sense.
Our journey began when both of us started breaking out of the boxes that society had put us in, especially after the 2020 lockdowns. But one box that I couldn't see was the one that held my family's cult.
I tried to tell Pablo, but he couldn't see it. His father controlled him totally, and I know I couldn't trust him. So I started looking around in the cult. I realized that everyone was either too afraid to speak up or they've been so beaten down that they had given up.
When it came to religion and the way of life that our dad had defined for us, no amount of graduate studies could get me to question it or even look at it differently. It had been a part of me since childhood. So when Anu began to question it, I couldn't handle it. It broke me. I felt so distant from her, like she was miles away and I couldn't reach her.
So I was trapped, cut off from my family and friends, no escape. The worst part, the one person I was supposed to do life with was part of what was holding me down.
So where did I go for comfort? Even deeper into the cult's beliefs, which led me to an even darker place. A place full of demons, evil spirits, witches, and curses. It was like sleep, where I had to go really, really deep before I could resurface and like be able to wake up. But I know that this was really, really hard on Anu because she felt so alone, unheard, and basically abandoned.
I had no one to talk to. All of the women that married into his family were all in the same boat in the sense of the hopelessness and depression we all dealt with.
At first, I couldn't believe that Anu would question any of it. Like, I was just shocked. I was like, you're questioning these things? You know, it was like heresy. And I couldn't handle it. And so what I did is I did my go-to, which is the way I was taught in the cult. And it is where you have an answer to everything. And so I tried to use that reasoning to kind of get to her. But she was beyond that. She wasn't under the control of that anymore.
We're all told never to pursue friendship and relationship, that we should only pursue God, that only God can make or break friendships. So this means that the women couldn't even be friends with each other.
And obviously, her attempts to wake me up didn't work either, because deep down I was terrified. I was terrified of what this would mean if I went along with her, if I tried to actually truly find the answers to the questions that she had, because in reality, the only answers I had were the pre-made ones. I didn't have any actual answers for myself. And if I went in and used my graduate training and actually started thinking critically about things, that would have been too much.
I was depressed. I shrunk to a very dangerous place mentally, yeah.
So it was a frightening thought, just that, personally, mental health, what that would do. It was just too much to bring myself to do. But in addition to that was the external factors. I had seen what happened to others who had left, and I knew that once you went down that path, there would be no forgiveness and no second chances. And I was right.
I was so desperate to escape. I was ready. I was ready to leave Pablo behind and just make a run for it.
Now, what I didn't realize was how bad it was for Anu. It was absolutely terrible. I had no idea that it was so bad that she was wanting to leave. Leave me, leave the world, leave everything behind.
But then I stopped. I still cared about him, even after everything. I decided to try one last time, try to wake Pablo up. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
I was so deep in my own depression because of the questions that she was asking that I couldn't see anything beyond my own darkness. I felt completely stuck.
Because his father still had complete control over him. I had to be careful of every word I said because I know that his father would twist it against me, even calling me possessed.
Then something shifted. I woke up. But unlike Anu, I didn't look back. And so nothing really changed about me immediately.
I was done. That's when Pablo started waking up. He started to see what I was saying all along. Yeah, we were in a cult.
I was still a loyal cult member, though a bit more dangerous now because I wasn't afraid anymore and my eyes were just starting to open. I was just waiting to see people's true colors now that my eyes were a little bit open. And I especially wanted to see who my dad really was.
Pablo wouldn't listen. He shut me down. He said I was overreacting, and he stayed loyal to his dad, even when it hurt me.
Because I wanted to see things for myself. I wanted to know things for myself, my own experiences. So I kept ignoring Anu's warnings and pleas. So I didn't change much in that area. And that almost destroyed us.
After years of abuse and pain, I'd reached a breaking point. I couldn't see any reason to stay, so I braced myself and I left.
Finally, I made a simple decision that changed the course of my life and the lives of all of us in our family forever.
And his father was desperate to keep control, but his cracks were showing, and Paula couldn't ignore them anymore.
And for that, I was excommunicated. And by extension, Anu and our whole family were cut off in an instant. But at the same time, I had like this survivor's guilt where I really had this drive to go back and free as many people as I could.
So I've had some time to process everything since I got out first. But for Pablo, it was still raw. The pain quickly turned into anger. He knew it would turn out like this, it would end like this, but he was hoping it wouldn't.
After being cast out of the family cult, I was finally able to see the truth of what had been going on. Finally, I could see who I was really dealing with, the character of the people that I looked up to and respected for so long. My father, a man who's scared of everything, carrying deep, deep untreated trauma, both mentally and physically sick, with all of his followers blindly trailing behind him, either too brainwashed, too weak, or too beaten down to speak out. Seeing all of that for really the first time was horrifying. But the worst part of it all is how predictable it all was.
I knew exactly what it felt like to be cut off from your family overnight. So I tried my best to be there for him and to show empathy during this emotional time.
I'd always known how things worked. I saw how it worked with my eldest brother. I saw how it worked with other people getting kicked out. But I was a sheep on the inside. And so I had never experienced what it was like to be an outcast. I was never able to see the cult from the outside. But once I was out, it was like seeing the whole twisted puppet show in ultra high definition. I felt for those who were still stuck in it, but I was just so angry at how ridiculous the whole thing was. So mad that people could keep following such an obviously sick man. And how far they would go to cater to his ever-changing whims.
We escaped with our family, but the damage was real.
It was a terribly distressing time. But through all that anger, through all that grief, Anu was right there, comforting me and trying to help me see the joy of freedom and the beauty of the world outside.
We're still dealing with a lot of emotional trauma, and we're still trying to put back together pieces of our lives.
Gradually, I started adjusting to this new life of freedom. I mean, it was amazing. It was freedom of choice, freedom to associate with anyone I wanted to, go anywhere, be anything I wanted to be. It was amazing. The same went for our children who had dodged a serious bullet, and now we're going to grow up with more freedom than we had ever had.
But we're learning to grieve, heal, and reconnect with the families we once lost.
But as for Anu and me, we had already taken the full impact. And the pain felt and still feels unbearable, popping up when we least expect it.
We have a long way to go to regaining all what was once lost in us, but we've come this far and we won't let it define who we are and our future.
As we're piecing ourselves back together bit by bit, side by side, in this journey that we call life.
This is our extraordinary and uplifting story about resilience and triumph.
Oh, okay. Oh, muy bien.
Woo!
Aquí a mí. Dale con el pie. Dale.
Oh, boom. Bella, bella, ven. Ven, 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 coge, coge.